crux of Thelema, his book of magic, the book of the law. And it just spiraled down from there. And it is, like you said, Luke, it's all about this old pagan, Old Testament, Mystery Babylon, Egypt, Babylonian magic. And it's real and it works. And he opened a rift. He opened a portal in the 1900s. So it's real. It works. He opened a portal. It's real. It works. He opened a portal. It's real. It works.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
Hey, welcome back to Blurry Creatures. This week we have a podcast with Not So Secret Society's podcast talking about Aleister Crowley. If this is your first time listening to Blurry Creatures podcast, we don't usually get too conspiratorial, but, you know, when these ancient occult leaders saw creatures, then we do talk about it. If you'd like to support this podcast, we are a member-supported podcast. Go to blurrycreatures.com/members. Become a member of the show. Support the podcast. We have more perks rolling out daily for all members. Every member gets access to early episodes, bonus episodes, and members chats. Next Monday, the 23rd, we're having another members chat, 7 p.m. Central. Come hang out with Luke and I. We're going to be talking to you guys directly. And tonight, we're doing our first live stream for Gold members. That's right, a live podcast where you can interact with us. We're doing it with Tim Albarino, and you can ask us questions. It's just another perk for people who really love the show and want to support it a little bit more every month. Go to blurrycreatures.com/members, become a member. And also, we're almost sold out of shirts. Again, we ordered a ton of shirts, but you guys are buying them like crazy. blurrycreatures.com/merch. Get yourself a t-shirt, and we'll ship it to you. You guys are amazing. Seriously, like, this podcast has become... I can't even tell you how busy it's gotten all of a sudden, and it's because you guys are sharing the show, and we get emails all day long. I don't even know what to say. If we don't write you back, it's not that we don't want to write you back. It's just that it's become overwhelming with all the channels and all the things happening and interviews and everything else. I mean, it's just incredible. So we're going to get Amy and Kara on the show and talk about Aleister Crowley. Thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. blurrycreatures.com. So welcome to you guys. You guys are fairly new. You started this, but you guys are already off and running, the Not So Secret Society's podcast. And we were just laughing a little bit about how we don't really get into conspiracy theories on our show, because we do talk about them, but once you kind of get in that realm, you start getting your channels deleted and dealing with all these problems. We try to stay with creatures. And we talked to Tim Albarino a lot about Aleister Crowley not Aleister Crowley, but about the gray aliens and what they are. Are they demons? Are they not demons? Are they, little gray men in suits that are controlled, or what are they exactly? But then, a lot of people have been like emailing us about one of the probably 5 things that people want to talk about is Aleister Crowley supposedly opening a portal and talking about seeing these alien creatures. And hey, it's a blurry creature, right, Luke? It's one of the blurriest.
We haven't talked about Crowley at all, actually. I mean, this is fascinating because we know that whatever work he did is perpetuated and still exists and still is continued today. We talked a little bit, Nate, in our last episode about the tombs of the God Kings and talking about what's happening at Bohemian Grove and are they continuing to sort of propagate and do these things.
It's true.
And why are they looking for relics? Why are they looking for the DNA of Nimrod and Romulus and these this perpetual, the cult would say they're divine, but we know that they were, for all intents and purposes, Nephilim or hybrids. And so here we are, and this is exciting. Yeah.
Welcome, Kara and Amy. Welcome to the show. It's a long intro.
I love it.
We're gonna have to edit that out a little bit.
No, it's all good. We just
okay, Luke.
We just need a little time to get the wheel, grease the wheel here. Do you ladies have any thoughts on Bigfoot?
Yeah, that's how we start.
Any new thoughts? Let's just kick it off in the creature space, because that's what we do here. For anyone that's new listening to this, there's probably going to be some crossover listeners. We talk about creatures and Bigfoot and stuff like that, and try to figure out what that is. And so
go ahead, Kara.
I would love to see Bigfoot. That's my first thought. Is I'd like to have a sighting of my own. I definitely believe in Bigfoot and all sorts of things. Seems like he's got to be some kind of like leftover from the hybrid stuff happening a long time ago. Maybe he survived the flood. I don't know how. Maybe I don't know how big he really is, how big his feet are. But if not, he's a hybrid being from now. And I was thinking about him, like how he's kind of looks like a Neanderthal a little bit. And I was like, maybe they created Bigfoot as well to kind of help prove their quote unquote evolution theory, as the missing link man, their missing link man. But I don't know. I love the concept of Bigfoot, and I definitely believe in him. Bigfoot, come find me.
I love it.
Yeah, I look for him in Idaho when I'm up there, but no such luck yet. But Bigfoot was an integral part. I think I told you guys last time in my winning my husband over. He's a big Bigfoot guy, so. Yeah. I'm a fan of Bigfoot. I know he's out there, and I'm ready to see him.
Well, he sounds like a matchmaker as well.
Right?
That's
who knew?
Multi-talented.
Yeah.
And he's a fan of the ladies. We know that. So no, it's Nate. This is not a joke, because it's actually true.
He is.
Like, apparently he likes to show up, or she, whatever it may be. The Bigfoot population is likes women's voices and
interesting
and music. So if you decide to go out and sing, maybe our furry friend will show up.
Yeah, maybe you don't want him to, though.
I know. I was just thinking. No singing in my backyard.
He might braid your hair.
It just seems like you want Bigfoot to show up if you're in a certain area. If you're up in Washington, it seems pretty chill.
Yeah.
But if you're down in the South, then he just gets angry. So watch out.
Oh, well, I live in Austin, Texas, and I kind of summoned him in just a second ago. So,
yeah, he's gonna come in and growl at you. He gets real nasty in East Texas. So that's what we hear. Yeah. That's what we hear. But
that's funny.
But so we've talked a lot about portals and a little bit about stargates and a little bit about. We haven't really done anything, because I know Crowley was also doing like drugs and stuff and trying to, we haven't talked about the elves that people see when they do DMT and all the weird things that go along with psychedelics. But we've talked a lot with Tim about transhumanism, UFOs, and all these things. And then there's just been a debate a little bit on our show about what are the grays, and, Crowley's connected to them. And so we thought it'd be cool to do a show about that and try to see are they just continuing this work that he started in the late 1800s and continuing it on, and are they doing that at CERN, or what are they doing, and what did he see specifically, and how does it relate to the blurry creatures? Probably the blurriest of the creatures we talk about is these entities that show up on fly away on UFOs and things. It gets weird, but thanks, ladies. Thanks for coming on, and
of course,
let's hop into it.
This is our jam. I mean, we just literally did a podcast on this on the major players, the major occult players. So it's kind of fresh in our mind, and they're definitely, Aleister was definitely summoning something And he was definitely doing this sex magic and this dark occultic magic. And he definitely created a rift, is what a lot of the major occultists think during this time in the early 1900s, right, Kara?
Yeah, it was 1918 when he did the Amalantra working.
Yeah,
which was we're opening portals with mediumship with his partner Roddy Miner, who's a female, and they created a portal between our universe and another, and it brought in Lamb. And you were just talking about psychedelics and DMT, and that actually I used to do psychedelics. I don't anymore, and I did a lot. I've done DMT, and I've actually seen a gray. I'm a seer. Well, I don't do this anymore, but this is part of my story. I've just recently been saved this last year by Jesus, but before that, I was very into the New Age and then practiced magic and didn't call in or portal in, but I've seen a gray. So they're real. It's a real thing. It comes in through the spirit world, but it's definitely a blurry creature. And researching Aleister Crowley and learning about the Amalantra working, I was feeling like, wow, I know exactly how this works. Unfortunately, this isn't necessarily something I'm proud of, but like I did, like I said, a ton of psychedelics, and I have to think that Aleister Crowley was probably using psychedelics as well when this happened.
Sure. Yeah.
The research I've done, he was, and he was so hardcore. I heard he got kicked out of some of the groups he was in because they didn't like him. You know, he seems like he was just a step. He was a step up another level. But what do grays look like? I mean,
it looks exactly what you think. And when I was very naive and I used to just do psychedelics just for fun on my own mostly. But I had connected, and I gave a testimony on our podcast, Not So Secret Societies, where I talk about this, and I had connected with a girl who opened circles and practiced magic, and we did psychedelics together. And so that's a key thing here is you open a circle when you do this.
Kara, what does that mean?
That means somebody calls in all the directions, and you call in the different guides or spirits that you work with. That's how you open the portal. And that's also very important. You have to close that portal at the end too. Yeah. And I never purposely practiced any witchcraft or anything, but I connected with this girl who was doing it. And then that was the night I saw a gray, and it portaled in through her eyes. And that's how Aleister Crowley did this work too. They even say that, and I'm not recommending anybody does this, but if you look at the image of Lamb, even through the eyes, that you can continue. Like you asked, are they still doing this? Like, yeah, they're still doing this. Unfortunately, they're trying to bring the fallen ones in. This is, God is very clear in the Bible all throughout. Don't practice magic. Don't do this stuff. And Aleister Crowley, he isn't nicknamed the Wicked One or Beast 666 for nothing.
Beast,
even Roddy Miner, the woman who was the medium that he worked with, didn't like him. They had a falling out.
His mom called him the Beast, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
So what happens if you don't close the portal? You said you had to close it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Babylon workings, and I was reading that who is that again? That's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory founder, Jack Parsons, and the Scientology guy, Ron Hubbard.
Ron Hubbard and Parsons.
Yeah, because they continued Aleister Crowley's work in 1946, just before 1947. We've got Area 51, all that stuff that happened, but they didn't close their portal. I was researching, and maybe it had been too big of a paradigm, like too much of a portal. Like they may have done magic beyond their abilities and couldn't close it. And I think that has a lot to do with how how someone like me is just doing psychedelics in their backyard and sees a gray portal through her friend's eyes. But if you don't close a portal, then you're leaving that.
It's like Stranger Things.
Yeah, literally. I mean, magic's real. Like the spirit world's real. I'm here to tell everybody this because I accidentally discovered this playing with psychedelics, and we need to take this stuff really carefully. And I'm so grateful. I just keep wanting to say that I've been saved and that I read the Bible now and I understand like the roots of why we should not practice magic. Well, this is a great example why. Grays are not our friends. These are the fallen angels. I totally believe this is how they're trying to get into our world.
Wow. So much there. Well, it's good to have you. It's good to have. I mean, we did this episode.
Did you guys know that? I was like, do they know that I've like literally seen?
No, I mean, this is how our show works. It's crazy. Okay. It's like the people come on that continue the story that we've been trudging along through, trying to get more clues to how to figure out these blurry creatures. And I had a feeling you guys knew a lot about it, but I didn't know that you have this much experience. So what is, well, a lot of people talk about there's a difference between fallen angels, grays, demons. There's there's a delineation between those. What do you think about that? And some people, skeptics, who say, "Oh, it's just hallucinations. It's not actually happening. It's just happening in your head. You're not actually talking to these entities." What do you say about that too?
It's absolutely happening. Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a real thing. For the longest time, because I did psychedelics. I'm 39. I did them and I don't do them anymore. It's been like about a year since I've done them. I stopped doing them. God saved me, literally. I have a whole testimony on Not So Secret Societies about this. But basically, for the longest time, I would do psychedelics alone, and I didn't know I was a seer. I didn't know I was a natural channel. I have the abilities to do mediumship and all of that. I don't do it at all anymore. I've closed myself off from that now that I know what it is. But before, I had no clue. And I thought that it was just my hallucinations for the longest time. I thought everybody heard voices when they did psychedelics. I thought everybody saw beyond this world. I thought Buddha was coming to everybody. And then all of a sudden, I started sharing later in my life and realized, no, okay, well, what is this? It's going on with me. And then my abilities just got stronger and stronger. I got to the point where I knew exactly what it was. And once I got the biblical foundation, I was like, oh my gosh, these fallen angels have been talking to me. I knew I'd been seeing the spirit world, but it didn't make sense to me until I really read that even Lucifer looks like an angel of light. Like this is what they're doing. They're, when the gray showed up, it literally like looked exactly like the quintessential gray. But I was looking at my friend's head and it all of a sudden, and they come through the eyes. They come back. The eyes are portals, and her head just started blurring like a gray, big eyes. Her eyes turned into the gray eyes, and it was stretching and like moving and like sponging. It was absolutely coming in and like activating her, downloading information, which is what these people are trying to do, is get that tree of knowledge information that we're not supposed to touch.
So how do we pull this all back to Crowley, right? You talk about like the late 1800s, and for those that don't have a lot of reference on Crowley, like he was born in 1875. There's basics out there you can pull up online, but he was into some things that we haven't really talked about. One is he's into sex magic stuff, and so kind of want to touch on that with you, Amy, and Kara, and then also Not So Secret Societies. He was part of a secretive group called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Would love to talk about that because he was into Egyptian stuff. Like Nate said, his mom called him the Beast. He ended up changing his name. Like, can we go back a little bit and talk about whatever was happening then and how we're seeing threads being pulled today on the same measure or same order of what maybe he started? Because we started the show talking about how he was trying to open, or did open a portal, and then there was this entity that came through that people say, just regular people that don't have shows like this talk about, saying it looks a lot like a gray. As Nate said, we talked about grays a lot. There's a bunch of different ideas about what these things are, and there's the practicalists that would say these are actually like some kind of alien race, and then there's the people that say this is definitely demonic and it's just a demonic thing, and then there's people like a friend of the show, Ellie Marzulli, Nate, who says it's a meat suit, right? Mm-hmm. For a demon to inhabit, because demons are disembodied. And
but Tim doesn't agree with that.
No, he doesn't agree with that. No, not at all. I'm just saying these are the hypothesis, right? Is that there's all these different ideas, right? And I don't know that we do have an answer necessarily, that because I think people fall on. It's not a fence either. It's like a triangle fence. Everybody kind of falls wherever they fall. So,
but you kind of mentioned a little bit, Kara. It was like that. The timing is interesting, and like in the 40s is when all of a sudden a lot of these UFO activities started happening, more sightings, and then the deep state is, really gets into the weeds of Area 51 and all that stuff. But kind of like, a couple decades after his, supposedly when he's really getting into the occultic stuff. So we could probably try to connect it all together. And
yeah, well, I mean, what I found funny with Aleister Crowley is he was born actually into like a really Christian household, and his father died at a young age, and he like went off and just rebelled. He just went into this full-blown rebellion, and he came back. And that's when his mom, like you said, called him the Beast of Revelation. And that was kind of the crux of his turning into this magical world of this kind of Enochian dark magic. And so he just kind of turned, rebelled, and just went headfirst into just all this sexual deviation. And I really think that's the crux right there. This magic opened these portals, along with drug use and this Egyptian magic that he dived head into. And it was actually in Egypt with, I believe, one of his first wives, who he was bisexual, but he explored all sorts of different perversions on all different levels. I mean, not just male and female, but he was thought to be a pedo as well. And so it was in Egypt when he summoned through sexual magic, I believe it was Iwas, it was what it was called. And so that's when he wrote his Crux of Thelema, his book of magic, the book of the law. It just spiraled down from there. And it is, like you said, Luke, it's all about this old pagan, Old Testament, Mystery Babylon, Egypt, Babylonian magic. And it's real and it works. And he opened a rift. He opened a portal in the 1900s. So
yeah, it's creepy because it's like, and it has a lot. There was a lot of, he started getting into prostitution quite a bit, and it kind of reminds me of like sort of the story of Nimrod, of doing some sort of occultic sex magic, and that's when Nimrod changed. And you wonder what's the connection there? Why doing those acts specifically change you or open yourself up? It's kind of weird.
It's interesting too. It's Egypt, right? Like we know so much. That is such the epicenter for so much, even biblical. And then we go to the Exodus, and that's the place where he goes to sort of tap into this pathway to the occult.
I think it has to do with the Orion lines. Do you know the Orion lines? So the pyramids are set up in the same as the Orion lines, but you see them all over the place. This is how you open portals. Part of how they do it on a really big level. And so going to Egypt, it would be a great place for him to try to practice that magic, to bring in like Iwas, his holy guardian, who Lamb, the being he channels later, was to continue Iwas's work. But when he channeled Lamb in, they say the gateway he created was like a link between Sirius and Andromeda, and Sirius is, comes off of, I believe, the Orion lines, the belt of Orion. That's supposedly their quote unquote gateway to heaven, and they worship the Sirius star, which is also the Masonic, I believe the Masons, that's on the all-seeing eyes, the dog star, Sirius.
Wow. We get a lot of those links. People are always talking about how the pyramids are laid out all over the world, and there's like this, it has a lot to do with how the stars are laid out. And I don't know, that gets into like topics that we don't normally talk about, but it somehow
we like to take it
right?
there.
Blurry stuff, more blurry stuff.
Yeah. We're just trying to figure out who Bigfoot is and what's he doing out there. And it gets us into these places, but it's all connected in some weird way. So, I mean, before Crowley, is anyone like him doing what he's doing? Is there anyone else who's trying to open portals? Or is he kind of like the godfather of this stuff?
He's the godfather of this. I mean, he's really one of the major founding fathers of all this occult magic. Yeah.
But like you said, he was just trying to replicate what we knew would be in the Babylonian mystery schools, right? Like, which it's hypothesized is sort of being maintained or protected by orders like the Masons, like who have this supposed secret knowledge and this and that they hold on to. Right. So, I mean, would you like the Godfather of maybe what we consider like the modern occultist stuff?
Yeah,
because
obviously,
I mean, this has obviously been going on for centuries, for millennia here.
Yeah, I think when he went to Egypt is when he just learned that Egyptian magic. That I definitely think it was stemming from them.
Well, it's interesting that he his whole book he claims was dictated by an Egyptian spirit, an ancient Egyptian spirit that the law of Thelema is his book that he says was. It sounds almost like Joseph Smith in some weird ways, where it's like he's getting it dictated to him. This whole thing. It's bizarro to me, but also it's not. None of it is surprising.
Is that like automatic writing or no?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, and that was really the time in the early 1900s. So Aleister Crowley was doing his deal, and he was working this dark magic occult stuff. And yeah, like you said, there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's all old magic just being brought back in and utilized. But also, you parallel that with like the Nazis and all of them. They were doing all that stuff with the Vril Society, Thule Society, the Vril Maidens with the hair, automatic writing, and the UFOs. It's amazing to me how it all kind of coincides. And something was open during that time to allow this kind of influx of these evil people, or evil spirits rather, coming through.
Jack Parsons and Hubbard. When they did the Babylon workings, they didn't close that portal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Couldn't. I don't think they could. I think it was beyond what they even thought. I think they were way deeper than what they knew. I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I know this is Nate. This is really a family show for us. But it's I'm curious about sort of the methodology that they have, that they use here, because I'm sure that has some insight into the darkness, right? We all know the depravity and sin provide, access points for the darkness, right? And the fact that they're doing sex magic stuff, which I think is strange, but it's like I know that from the Whore of Babylon stuff that we heard about with Parsons, and that they were trying to do the same thing in the desert. Like, they're trying to do the exact same thing. Do you guys have any insight on what maybe the occultic theory is behind all that, or what? I mean, it obviously works, but what they're doing, is it just like the idea that Paul says that that sexual sins against our body are that much more? It's just also a sin against our body, and so there's this sort of like level of depravity that invites this. Is that more or less like surmising what's going on here, or is there specific things that this sort of stuff allows for? I'm trying to be careful what I say. That's
Go ahead, Kara.
I don't know much about sex magic, honestly. That was never anything I personally practiced, but I could only guess that, to become one, right? There's a bond that happens in the physical world right here. And then if you're evoking a spirit in, then I would guess that you're allowing it to stronghold in your body, and you're bringing that energy in here. And then it's just going to give you more information. I don't really know about a lot about that.
Do you think that they're trying to, in a sense, do some of what we saw in Genesis 6 with the inviting procreation by
yes. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I've definitely wondered, because I've just reading the Bible and studying it for the first time, and we're actually reading Genesis 6 and kind of tying it to Enoch in our Bible study, which Amy leads. And I've been wondering, how did the Nephilim physically come here and mate with women, or did they use sex magic, or a combination of both? Because from my own experiences, I believe that the fallen ones are at least energies mostly. Like, when I saw these things, I always used to think aliens would be like E.T., some physical being could come up and touch its finger like he does in the movie. But then after my experiences on psychedelics, I was like, oh, the spirit world is like energy. So if you're doing sex magic with a spirit, it's the energy of it, right, that you're evoking in.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I know that biblically too, also angels came and walked around. So the idea that it physically happened, I tend to err on that side, just because there's biblical precedence for it, right? Like, there's the idea that the angels walked into Sodom and Gomorrah, and
that's what I was going to say.
We just talked about, we just
and the fact that the men wanted to know them, and that's what the Bible says. The men wanted to know them, and they were trying to protect these angels, and so there's something to it in the supernatural. And there's something to it because the Masons and all of them want to, there's something to the sex magic. Right. There absolutely is.
That makes sense. We talked to a few people, Nate, on the show that talk about Nephilim host breeding, and the idea that there's these breeding programs that are going on across the world to create hybrids. And how do you do that? Well, I mean, one way would be that, like Gen 6, we believe they showed up on top of Mount Hermon. They stepped onto Earth. That is one way. But the other way would be what Parsons and them were doing, was to try to sort of be a vessel for the indwelling of something bad.
I mean, the thing I read about Crowley that was so crazy is he gets sick and he goes to live with his uncle or something, and then his uncle gives him a prostitute when he's 15. Yes. And so it's he gets baptized into this dark world through this sex act, and then his whole life is just messed up from there. So whatever it is, that does to our access to the spiritual world. I've never really thought about it in that sense, but it must be cool to go back and read the Bible as an adult, Karen, with all this knowledge now.
Yeah. Well, I never had read it before. That's part of my story, is I had never even opened the Bible until this last year. So it's amazing. It's the best book I've ever read. Everything I read, and it just blows my mind, and it's so profound and amazing. And I don't know if I would have understood it the same way at other times in my life I'd read it, because of the awakenings I've kind of had about this world, and really understanding Mystery Babylon and what was happening in the Old Testament, and why God needed to flood the earth, and why idolatry is bad, why we shouldn't practice magic. I got it because I made those mistakes and then I read the Bible. So yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of us grow up and we have a hard time believing the stories because we're kind of sheltered from all that stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like you get to a certain age and you slowly hear stories about it happening. And I'm sure you guys dive into that stuff all the time on your podcast. But, a lot of people still think this stuff is conspiracy, like it just doesn't happen. And then it makes you sort of doubt your faith, I think, because you don't have, I don't know. And then the weird stuff starts, presenting itself more and more. And you're like, oh, the Bible is true. All these stories are true. And it's just a funny how we all get there eventually, but the roads we get there are different. But in terms of Crowley, they say that, everyone gets their 10,000 hours who becomes an expert at whatever they're doing, right? Does it work the same way in the occultic world where like you have to practice and get better at it? Or is it just something that like it takes over you and then you're a slave to it? I mean, because it sounds like he's trying. He buys that house in Scotland and he gets weird and he's trying, and, and then he's like trying to do it, but he's not successful for a while. And that was my question, is just eventually he seemed like he got better at it. I don't know how that works.
I would imagine the more magic you learn, the better, like anything, like, more tricks the longer you've been riding a bike, the more tricks you can do, the more spirits that he allows to stronghold in him, the more spirits he has to work for him and with him. But I think that the more you practice magic, the better you get. But at the same time, also, if he's evoking spirits into him and he's using sex magic to have those spirits stronghold inside of him, he's going to take on their information. He's going to that's the thing about magic, I believe, is that there's a sacrifice with everything. Like, yeah, you can go out and practice magic and call in Lamb, this being or whatever, Aleister, but now Lamb is taking stronghold in you to give you this information or whatever. And that it can make him sick if he tries turning on these beings and he doesn't want to work with them anymore. They could turn against him, and that very likely might be why Boleskine House ended up burning down later, right? With future owners, because it had such bad energy.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to think too, like to your point, you alluded to the fact of sacrifice, and a lot of what Aleister was doing was sacrificing animals too, and there's life in the blood. And so when you're giving these blood sacrifices and the more you're doing, and if he moved into actual human sacrifice, which I'm sure he did, I wouldn't put it past the guy. He's called the beast, for goodness sake. You're shedding of that blood is an opening, and it's a way to invoke and bring about certain principalities and demonic entities. It's just part of it. So I think that's a big part of growing in his magical skill, if you will, upping the sacrifice.
Do you think that most of the elites know these? They have an extensive knowledge of how the spirit world works?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
They're in the circle, the triangle. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of Christians are just clueless to. It's like we believe the spiritual story, but for some reason we're also like we're also green. We just don't. It's all so new to us. And we get emails all the time from people who are just like, I never thought about it like that we're in this war. And I'm like, yeah, we are in this war, and I don't know what happens, but it seems like they know, and they practice this magic under the surface. Whereas probably in the olden days, it was more on the surface. People were seeing it. There was it was just everywhere. And then it kind of goes more underground. And when I say, Crowley's the godfather, I think maybe he's one of the guys in the modern times to bring it back out to the surface, and he's actively doing it. That's kind of what I'm thinking when I say that.
Yeah, it was overt, not in the shadows, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and you kind of see how, like we kind of alluded to earlier, is like in the 1900s is kind of where things started with him. And then you see like Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, you see the Nazis on that side opening up these things. And 47 to 55 around World War II, you see all these things happening, UFO sightings, Antarctica, everything's kind of culminating. And we literally go from like horse and buggy, I'm being exaggerating, but we go from horse and buggy to like cell phones within 50 years. And something happened. There was some veil lifted. There was some rift. Something happened. We would be remiss if we didn't think that, because there's all these components going on.
It sounds like Mount Hermon, Nate, like where there's this trade of offspring for technology. There's this idea that there's an explosion in technology, and then when there's an incursion. It's fascinating. The question on this, because Nathan's come up a bunch, and we see it in the Bible as well, is the idea of blood, right? We know this exists in the occult. Like it's sort of ha-ha in the media with MGK and Megan Fox drinking each other's blood, and it's just like, but we know, we look back and, like, you know, if you do a survey of the Old Testament and you read about covenants and sacrifices, that there was this sacred aspect to blood, even in sacrifices to Yahweh, to God. And there's a lot of that in the occult that exists, whereas, you know, we take communion in the Christian church and the Catholic church, the Eucharist and all that different things, and there's this representative of it. But I've been wanting to think about and ask about this, and not that you guys have an answer, maybe you have a great answer, but the significance of blood in all of this, to me, is something that I've kind of been pondering on, Nate. Like, because I'm reading through the Old Testament now, and it's just like there's whole chapters on the way that they essentially sanctify and make the altar holy and make these places holy, and it's in the spilling and spreading of blood. And then we see the perversion of this in the occult, where there's this spilling of blood, and there's this, you said sacrifice, and if you think of it, sacrifice or something happens is the best way to say it. I don't know exactly how, that's not very scientific, but something happens.
Well, it's almost like maybe it opens a portal. It's almost like it I mean, as simple as that sounds, it's almost like it does.
Well, we know there's something with it because Jesus's blood was shed. That's right. And it was this remission of blood that had this huge power, right? Mm-hmm. So like you alluded to, Luke, you have this kind of juxtaposition of what the elite and what they're doing. There is something to it, and they're taking it in a perverted way. We know that there's life in the blood. And so when shed blood is poured out, it's a form of life. It's a form of giving of energy, and it's powerful. And the Bible alludes to it. I mean, the minute they stepped off Noah's Ark, we just studied this in our Bible study, you know, God tells them, drain the blood out of the animals. Why? Yeah. He didn't want them eating the flesh with the blood in it. Why? He knew, you know. Enoch alludes to the cannibalism and the blood drinking. Right. And so...
And connecting this to sex magic too, I believe in sex magic, they feel as though the energy they're getting is a life force energy, the eros or something. And I believe also like the blood has the life, right? So that maybe that's like similar, like life force energy. You're either getting it from the sacrifice with that blood, or in the sex magic from that. Is it called eros or eros? Eros? Yeah, something like that.
Eros. It's like it's the root word even for like erotic.
Like movies and stuff where they're like sucking the life force energy out of kids or things like that. And then you know, like there's got to be definitely some kind of power in the blood for sure.
Well, and then we hear stories of like cattle mutilations where they're sucking the blood out of these animals in like places like Idaho, and it's becoming more and more of a problem.
Right.
You know, some of the guys that go on shows like ours, like David Paulides and stuff, they talk about the anomalies of like these animals are just like sucked dry. What?
It's weird.
Like, it's like someone just takes a straw and pokes it in the cow, and it's just, it's obviously UFO activity and things like that, which is all related to the Crowley stuff and the portals and all this stuff coming down. It sounds like there was a baton that was passed though, like started with Crowley and he opened this thing, and it's just been kind of continuing on. And that's kind of my mind. If I think of a visual of how I see the story, is it seems like he passed it on to other guys, and they're still doing it. And then you see it happening. A lot of people send us links all the time. Like, that's what CERN is. That's what they're doing at CERN. And we're like, maybe.
Or even like Astroworld, like we talked about with Amy. Like there's these rituals that are happening in front of people's faces, and they don't recognize it. And it's like so overt. Maybe that's the beginning of them stepping out of the shadows. Yeah. Maybe because at this point now it's in the open. I mean, talk about in the open, right? Like this week we're talking about the sort of ministry of truth, where it's like Project Mockingbird now exists in the in the open. Like they're no longer just saying that there's no longer like a covert. They're establishing a government entity to propagandize it's. I mean, so it's just, I'm just saying those are parallels. It's not those saying that they're parallels where like it's like they stepped out and now they're just doing it, and they're saying like, we're going to do this, and you won't recognize it, or if you do, it doesn't matter. You can't stop us. Which I think is all crazy too.
It is crazy. And like you talked about MGK and Megan Fox, and I always kind of liken it because we are studying Noah, and it relates back to, like, if we're thinking about end days and what's going to happen, it's almost like this reverse bell curve, right? Like you have this height of intellectual fallen angel knowledge, and it kind of goes down, and then you have it's coming back up again. And like Crowley and all these kind of characters were starting to open it, and it was almost like God was like, okay, it's time. We can start to allow that to come back so my will can be fulfilled in the end. But that's how I look at it. It's like this, now they're all coming out. It just seems like they're all talking about it, blood drinking and cannibalism. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah. It's crazy.
You know, we talk about it'll be like the days of Noah at the end. And it's just, it seems like the occult is hearkening back trying to recreate or hearkening back for a renewing or a re-emergence of the golden age, right? We think about when Nate and I talk about the golden age, like pre-flood, where there was, you know, all you got to do is read Genesis, where there's explosion in technology, there's hybrids running around, there's this with insatiable appetites and bloodlust, and is this explosion of technology, and really in the cultist way, this sort of pinnacle that God then just brought into with water, then promised he wouldn't do it again with water, but the end we know he does with fire, right? And so it seems like there is this desire in the darkness to reanimate, to bring back in this golden age again. And I can't help but think that's what we're seeing, is this exalting of depravity in a way that, and I know you guys dive down deep into these, but it's like the New World Order and this ruling. In biblical times, it was the Watchers and the progeny of the Watchers, and they ruled, the God Kings. Nate, we just talked about this, and it's like they're trying to do it again. I mean,
totally. That's the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which, you know, is attached to with Crowley.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Good that you brought that up.
And I, you know, I spent some time in the New Age because I was lost and I got deceived before I was saved. And everybody in the New Age is all about trying to usher in the next Renaissance period, the next golden age. That's all they're talking about. I think they have any idea that they're helping usher in this Antichrist energy, which is just like you're talking about, like pre-flood stuff. So yeah, no, I mean, Aleister Crowley, when he was working with Aiwass, that holy guardian that he channeled in Egypt to help him write his book, he, I think, helped him with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn as well.
One of the things that I'm thinking as the show sort of barrels on after all these, you know, couple years of doing this now, I think that before I started this podcast, I kind of thought everyone was loyal to Jesus, but a lot of people had a different understanding of what that is. But you said earlier in the episode, Kara, that like Satan comes as an angel of light.
Yeah.
And then you see some of these things like, you know, Astrofest, and then there's like prayers to the families afterwards. And I'm like, well, whose prayers? It's like they are actively praying to Satan almost, it feels like. But I used to think that like when everyone said that, they had some sort of Christian undertones to it all. But now I'm like, no, there's two, and they're loyal to the dark one. And there's more people in that camp than I ever thought before. And so I think that's just what a lot of people are naive to, is that they're actively worshiping and devoting this to Satan himself. But it comes across like it's kind of like this weird strain of Christianity almost, the way that they go about it, right?
Well, Anton Levy, who is one of the major players we talked about, and he came after Aleister Crowley, he's quoted saying that the New Age, all of that stuff, tarot, divination, astrology, all that is literally Satanism rebranded. So you have a whole community of people, and they're pushing it on the early generations too with kids. You look on TikTok, there's people drawing tarot cards and playing with crystals. They have no idea what they're doing. Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. And I came from that non-believing side. Unfortunately, I hate saying it, but that's my truth. I was saved. But these people, they call God source. They don't even, what source? Oh, I'm worshiping the sun. Who's the sun? That's Ra. This is a fallen angel, you guys. Like, if it's not God on his throne, capital G God in the Bible in heaven, that Jesus, Holy Spirit, God, I'm going to go and say it's the Antichrist, like one other form of it. And these people in the New Age, they really don't know what they're doing at all. And they're worshiping gods like Isis, acting like she's a good thing. They're worshiping Osiris. They're all of these different beings, and paganism, calling in the elements, worshiping the creation and not worshiping the creator. And it's really sad. Like, even the saddest thing is when they call Jesus an ascended master or Christ consciousness. Like, people are, and this is all by design. Like Anton LaVey said, New Age is Satanism rebranded.
It sounds like very Masonic at the same time.
Yeah. They're also tied together. Like, it's just a slightly different. It's the same gift with different wrapping paper on it. And, there's little tidbits all over, but that's just how Satan works. Right. And I mean, what do you guys think? Like, I think it's interesting with Aleister Crowley and the whole lamb thing, right? He looked like a gray. And then you have Hollywood like revering Aleister, like the Beatles had him in their album, and you see it kind of permeating through Hollywood and the music and the movies. But how is this going to play into the end times too? All of a sudden, then Hollywood is promoting these gray aliens as like, from another planet, and they're spinning all this kind of stuff. And so how does that play into the end with what Aleister, because that's really the first kind of image we saw of what like a demon or an alien would look like, right? Mm-hmm. So does that make sense?
The alien emoji is a gray face too. They're totally pushing. What I'm talking. They're trying to make it seem friendly, like the kids having alien toys, and even think of the movie E.T. Like everything Hollywood puts out and normalizes. I believe that aliens are just demons, these fallen angels. I think all of it is, and so, but they're trying to make it seem friendly.
Well, yeah, you normalize it, right? You just start young, and then people are just numb to it.
Well, I have a thought. A couple people have come on our show and said, as the reason why things look different from different time periods is because when the Holy Spirit starts to proliferate, it's harder for the darkness to do its thing. It's harder for the darkness to take over. It's harder for people to summon this stuff because there's so many Christians and we're spread around the world, and it really creates. It's difficult for the darkness to do what it wants to do, right? And a lot of that stuff a lot of the shutdowns and stay 6 feet away from people and things like that was more than just, a tool of propaganda to try to snuff out the small businesses and take corporate takeover, or, it was more than just like this corporate greed. It was actually like a spiritual
ritual.
A ritual.
A weapon, like a tactic. Like they're trying to weaken us so that they can come in and, wage war, spiritual war in a different way. And so I'm wondering, is it difficult for Crowley and some of these guys to do what they're doing because Christianity is spread and more people are having the Holy Spirit, and it's just more difficult for them. And now we're at a point where, like you were just saying, now people are on TikTok just stumbling into occultic stuff, and they're completely clueless to it. Whereas that probably wouldn't have happened, 50 years ago, but it's starting to happen now more and more and more.
Yeah, I think that's just God's will and his timing, right? Like he's allowing it to happen. The Bible says evil men will wax worse and worse. And so that's bringing about his will and his end times, because we know that has to happen. So to your point, I mean, it's almost like God saying, not time yet. It's not time yet. Like Satan is going to have his day. He's going to have his minute. Mm-hmm. But then it was allowed almost in the Babylon workings. It was almost like a tear. And it was like, okay, now it's going to enter in, and we're going to propel forward to these end days.
It's quickening.
Yeah, quickening. Yeah.
Corinthians, where is it Jesus talking or something, where they're talking about grieving, and that like God allows us to grieve to a certain level so that we can really feel and understand the depths of what's going on and what we've done. And maybe that's kind of on a macro level what's going on with the world when that the Babylon workings was able to happen, and that portal was so big it was left open, and now all of this, after the UFOs are coming out and the energies are coming out, and this technology that created MK Ultra that came from the fallen angels during the 50s came out, the TV, the phones, where did that all come from? From these portals that were open, I believe. But maybe God is like, okay, I'm going to let you guys, this world needs to grieve and really like see Megan Fox talking about drinking blood, and see cannibalism, and see the horrific things like Astroworld happening in front of our faces, so that humanity needs to grieve to a certain level to really feel the depth of what's truly happening in this world.
Yeah, it's almost like it's always I think sort of the whole like spirit of the Nephilim has always been here with us, even when they were destroyed. The things they were doing, the way they were doing it, and the technology. Yeah, it's like it's the same theme, and it continues to happen. I think sometimes, Christians are clueless because we separate things like New Testament, Old Testament, and we don't see it linearly. And I think what you guys do on your podcast is trying to wake people up like, hey, this stuff's been going on forever, and it's still very much right here, right in our face. Wake up. There it is. And I know sometimes it can be hard for people because they like some of this stuff. They like some of these things, and they don't realize, hey, like you probably
it's sad.
Shouldn't be into that TV show, or whatever it is.
People, especially in the new age, they do their moon circles and they do their manifestations and they think they're doing all this good stuff and playing with crystals and opening portals and playing and practicing magic. And it's like, no, we shouldn't be doing any of that. And it's because it's just like Anton LaVey said, it's all been rebranded and Lucifer comes as an angel of light, it's really sad because people, they don't know that they're helping usher in the Antichrist energy. And the Bible is very clear in Revelations. The Antichrist is going to come and show himself for 3.5 years, and he's going to turn on everyone, including the people that ushered him in. Like, God says, have your astrologers save you when it comes time, guys. No, nobody can save you, except for Jesus, except for God.
Yeah.
I like when you get fired up.
I know. I just did that again.
It's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah.
No, you saying that reminds me of Yahweh, God, like punking the Egyptian magicians. Like, you can do this. Oh, Moses, can you do this? Yeah. You can do that. Well, can you do this? And now you can't do that. And can you turn the Nile to blood? No, you can't do that. We serve the King of Kings, right? And it's funny when this stuff always is kind of brought up this thought I've been pondering on in the last week or so, Nate. And it's the idea that we attribute don't watch that show, don't read that book, don't do this. There's power in that, right? You don't want to open yourself up to that. I don't think we think about the Bible the same way. There's so much power in the Bible. I don't think we think about opening the Bible and the power we're able to unleash doing that, because I think we think about it in the evil sense, man, don't read that, or don't read that book on the occult or witchcraft, or don't watch that paranormal show because you're inviting something in. But we realize that when we open our Bibles, we're inviting the King of Kings in, the Holy Spirit, the Elohim, like Adonai. We're inviting the God of the universe in. And I don't know if I don't think we as Christians even attribute that the power that should be attributed to that. There's so much power in that. There's so much good and so much light and power in the Bible. And I think that oftentimes we focus on the evil stuff and saying, stay away from that. Don't, and you don't want to dabble. I'm not saying that at all. But the idea that we could do something that would open ourselves up to it. Dude, why don't we just, that's what we do with the Bible. Open that up. Open ourselves up to that. And it's something I don't know. Nate, I've been thinking about this lately. Just I think we treat the Bible and prayer and those things that are practices of Christianity and of God that as sort of innate things and innocuous, and yet those things are so powerful. We are,
the occult's doing it.
The occult's doing it.
It's almost like they have more faith sometimes.
Agreed, completely. Yeah,
it's so true. Yeah, they'll spend hours in meditation and incantations and stuff. But I love that you said that, Luke, because it's so true. And the spoken word, right? How did Jesus refute the enemy in the wilderness when he was like, if you just bow down and worship me, all these kingdoms, all these powers will be given to you. And what did Jesus do? He spoke the word. He said, it is written, and so we talk about that a lot too, Kara and I, and just how powerful the spoken word is, which also can be twisted in the occult. And we see that as well. But I love that you said that.
I think we forget that sometimes, that there's,
I agree.
We hold the keys of the kingdom. Yeah. The keys of the kingdom.
Armor of God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's weird is spells are spoken, they're words spoken out loud. So you got to think of prayers are probably more powerful if we speak them out, prayers to God. And, you just don't think about it that way. You're never taught these things. And what a blessing, sort of in a way, Kara, that you can read the Bible and believe it all from the beginning. And you don't, everyone has their struggle of faith, but it's almost like a gift that you don't have to process out what the ancient world was like, and did it happen? Is that a metaphor, or whatever we tell ourselves in our modern brains? No,
it's so despiritualized, Nate. Like the supernatural has been ripped out of the church, and that's it's a broad brush, but I would just say I know there's a lot of churches that aren't that way, but I think the scales are tipping towards this academic, intellectual version of Christianity that is very much we serve a supernatural God. It's neutered, yeah. And the cult doesn't operate now. It's not head knowledge, right? That's why I love like the Mike Heisers of this world that are like trying to wake people up to putting the supernatural back into the Word, into the Bible, into the faith.
Have no other gods before me. He wouldn't say that if they weren't out there.
That's right, Nate.
Yeah,
Cha-ching. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. I came into this all really backwards. Like I think that all of you we're all born Christian, came into Christian households, right? And so I didn't have any of that, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I, like I said, I had those psychedelic journeys for a long time, and I practiced magic without even knowing magic was real, without even knowing about the fallen angels. And then once I was saved, Jesus came into my life and started reading the Bible and understanding things. Like something that happens to new Christians, I feel, is spiritual attack is really hard. I mean, think about it. I was on the Luciferian timeline my whole life until I came onto God's timeline with the Holy Spirit and Jesus. And I was under a lot of spiritual attack. And also because as a seer and a channel and doing mediumship and stuff like that, and Aleister might have experienced some of this too. Because, on his deathbed, he goes, what have I done? You get strongholds placed inside of you with these spirits. This is why magic, another reason it's so dangerous. And I was under attack when I became a Christian. When I first became a Christian and started reading the Bible, it was some of the hardest couple months of my life. And what got me through was reading the Bible. And Amy has been a mentor and guide to me. It's been the last year that I've just been converted and come to be a Christian. Like, this is new for me. And I literally would read the Bible out loud and say, we serve the Lord in this house. God has granted me the spirit, not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. I mean, I've got verses all over here. I have my Bible on my desk, and it was that armor of God has saved my life, because the spirit world is real. And I have, take my word for it, you guys, I felt it, I've seen it. It's not our friend, and you can feel it when an attack's coming on. But if you say, we serve the Lord in this house, and you open your Bible up or you put the Psalms on and you have that going, that is the armor of God. That is the gift of the Bible. And that is something, as I, came in this backwards, knowing the spirit world is real, not having God or that faith connection in my life, but then coming to being a Christian and having spiritual attack. The Bible is literally, what do they say? The breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of salvation. Like, I have chills right now. It's amazing. It's so powerful. And this was God's gift to us. Basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Preach.
I love it. No, I've been saying it more. I've been reading prayers more out and audible lately. Because I felt like this last year for me has been really difficult, and I've been doing that more and more and more. And it seems like the more like I do walk around my house and say, God, your spirit is in this house right now, and be with me. And I say it out loud, and I probably wouldn't have done that years ago. And I don't think about it the same, and I never will again. And it's amazing. So that's cool. That's cool. You have a great testimony, and that's really encouraging, because a lot of us just grow up with, you grow up with stories like that and the flood and all these things, but you have no understanding of like what was going on back then. And then you find out, like on your show, like not back then, it's happening right now.
End times are now, right?
They're doing it right, and they could be doing it next door. You don't even know, They're doing it in movies too, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like every time.
That's a good question though. Like, to kind of cap this off, like from a macro level, what's going on now? And then we talked about Crowley in the 1800s. We talked about Parsons in the 50s and 60s, and L. Ron Hubbard. And we know he created Scientology, which is a scam for one, but also there's a lot of evil in there. We know that. What's happening now, do you believe, like based on just kind of pulling this timeline all the way to today, like from the macro level? Do you like, obviously we can talk in platitudes about it being end times, and organizationally speaking, what's going on? Are there organized groups of people that are in power and occultists that are doing or are actively doing this today?
Yeah.
Like right now?
I think
like they're doing.
I think that, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I think you guys posted up the other day about them opening up CERN again. It's been like, what, 3 years or something. And you see them revealing who they truly are. There was a speech, I think it was one of the royals at one of the UN or some sort of climate change. And he said, we will give him billions and billions of dollars, him. And a lot of people speculated that he was alluding to the Antichrist. Did you hear that?
I didn't see
okay,
that.
I'll send it to you. But, and so my point is they give themselves away. If you're listening and you're engaged and you're not passive and you're astute to kind of what's going on and you're biblically sound, God is going to give you that revelation. You'll pick up on these little nuances. You'll pick up on the this and the that will show you kind of who's in charge, who's running the thing, what's going on, what's going down. I think they tell us. I think they show us who they are and what's happening. But you have to have that biblical lens to really, really get it. The fear, you have to have that fear of the Lord, because that's the beginning of wisdom, right? So I don't know if that answered your question. Kara, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the elites are doing it, and at a high level, they're all doing it. They're doing it. They just aren't showing us exactly all of it, but it's happening behind closed doors. You know what God says? He sees what's happening in the darkness, and everything in the darkness will come to the light. They're doing it. But not just that. I think about Helena Blavatsky, who's like one of the major players and mothers of the New Age movement.
Spirit cooking.
Yeah, all that stuff. I believe it was Lamb that Aleister Crowley channeled that helped the book that Helena Blavatsky wrote, the Liber book, Liber, LIBERLXX1, The Voice of Silence, The Two Paths, The Seven Portals. And so that information came from Lamb, and then Helena Blavatsky wrote this book, and Aleister had his piece in it too. But Helena and these people, Alice Bailey, Aleister Crowley, Anton Levy, they help the foundations of the New Age. So yeah, we have the elites doing all this on a huge scale, magic, but I'm always going to come back to the individuals that are doing it in the New Age. They're helping us open portals and usher in these energies and practice magic and doing all the things that we're not supposed to do, like astrology and crystals and Reiki and it's on all that stuff, the Satanism rebranded. And so yeah, the elites are doing it on a big level, but also when you have a whole bunch of like individuals doing it around the world, their collective energy is definitely doing something. I've had a lot of thoughts about astrology and how there's definitely on the moon, they're doing full moon circles and things like this, individuals are, but also the elites are manifesting stuff on these full moons. And you take CERN into the picture on that. It's no mistake. I believe they opened CERN during an eclipse portal. Like they're practicing magic on a huge scale, micro, and then they're all macro, and they're also practicing it on a micro scale with individuals. And together, it's just one big spell.
Nate, it's crazy because this is like in different terms. We talked about this, like I think about dark waters, and because we're a creatures podcast, we kind of you know that. So we talk about everything sort of in that. On that path, but we like to make it a broad brush, right? But the idea that what we're seeing in our space is that there is like this huge uptick in sightings, experiences of cryptids and creatures and weird stuff like that. The people that we have on the ground that we talk to are saying, "Oh, they're seeing stuff they've never seen before," or we don't even know we don't know what it is. And not only that, the things we do know or do have terminology for or do know what it is, we're seeing those on a level that we haven't seen before. And some of that you could write off and say that's because we're more connected, right? And we've always got a phone and everybody, sure, some of that. But the idea that like, no, this is really happening at a big uptick. It's it's days of Noah stuff, but it's also like, man, what you're saying kind of resonated, Kara, is that like they've kind of Mickey Moused this Luciferian stuff so that everybody's kind of can do it, and it's innocuous and it's innate and doesn't do anything, and it's just a thing to do for your chakra or whatever, right? And they're getting a bunch of it feels like a pyramid, right? It sounds crazy, but it's not. That all these people on the bottom are doing these things, these little rituals that we've made normal, we've normalized, or society's normalized. And, and as you go up and up and up, of course, the top, there's these really gnarly magic practices happening with the elites, but they've got all these masses just doing things that they've normalized or made or neutered or whatever it is they've made to be like the Mickey Mouse version, but people don't understand the power they're trafficking in and what they're doing.
They have no clue.
Right.
Yeah. Such good points, both of you guys.
Well, it's almost like when you get to an elite level, you kind of run out of new experiences. I think is that sort of the temptation. You get money, you have everything you want, you get bored, and then you start, well, let's go take a plane flight to Epstein's Island or something. And then you get sort of sucked into it, right? Like, because you've experienced everything. It's like the world is you can do whatever you want. And then you just get bored. You probably get bored where the average person's just grinding out, trying to make 9 to 5 work and pay their bills. And then these elites are just like, it reminds me of being on
trying to get through the firmament.
right. Getting weird. It reminds me kind of being on tour when I was playing music. It's like you just sit around, you have 8 hours a day, and all of a sudden people start, you start smoking cigarettes and doing things you never would do, right? But you're just sitting around and you have all this time.
What do they say? Idle hands or something?
Yeah. And is that how the occult sort of sucks a lot of these people into it? They just
it's that thirst for knowledge, the endless and you can't ever fill that hole. It's just an endless search to fill that hole. And these people, what they need is the Holy Spirit. They're going the wrong way. They're searching for the wrong thing. It's the wrong tree.
Right. It's the God-shaped hole in all of us, right? Very cheesy Christian song, but it's actually right on.
And going back to what you were saying, Luke, Kara, what other creatures have you seen? Because why is it this gray alien creature that everyone's seeing? And it's just really bizarre.
I've seen Lyran, like cat. They're like the Lyrans. They call them the Lyrans, the cat faces. I've seen that as well. I've seen like Buddha and Ganesh and Green Terra. There's been a lot of spirits like that have come through. I've seen what I felt was from Metatron, like the sacred geometry, like flashing. It always comes out of the face, like portals out of the face. But the gray was the blurriest one of all. It literally, I love that blur because it wasn't like just solid like gray face. It was like stretching and moving, and it was weird.
Well, because then some people see him running around through cornfields too. And so it's just bizarre. The more you try to figure it out.
It looks like it's right there. It looks real. It looks like a physical thing. But if you were to I didn't try, go to touch it, it would just be energy layered over. Because they talk about shapeshifters, like the reptilian shapeshifters and stuff. And I've thought a lot about this because I was like, are they actually like lizards, like shapeshifters? They're going to turn into a physical lizard. But I actually think it's the spirit world is layered on over us because we're only seeing 2 or 5% of the light, right? Have you guys heard that statistic? As humans. And so the spirit world, if it's just layered over us, and there's some people that can see it, or on psychedelics you see it, or people like Aleister Crowley channeling it in with mediums and stuff, it's all right here. It's just a matter of seeing through, quote unquote, that veil or seeing through those dimensions. So I really just think this is my opinion, that it's energy, but absolutely could be running through the field. I mean, people see ghosts, people see spirits, and
and we've done a lot of episodes in trying to delineate the two, and we've brought on people who can see. What do you think about Christians who can see that through the veil? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm a Christian, and I don't choose. I mean, I don't think we should be using our third eye and seeing through the veil.
Because some people say they could see angels and demons from being little kids, and they can just. It's like they're interacting. There's no veil. They're just. I don't know. It's a hot debate on our show. Some people we did one episode on it, and people freaked out.
So is it? I mean, that would be medium. That'd be a medium. That's what mediums do, is you see that stuff, you're channeling it in, though. You're actively channeling it in. I mean, I guess if somebody's just seeing that stuff, I would invite them to close the portal or say, I don't adhere to this, or we serve the Lord in this house. I personally don't think that seeing that stuff is a good thing. I don't know, though. I don't have all the answers, but I feel like, yes, the Bible talks very much about how they saw angels, the angels came in, and we, like Amy said, we were just studying that. But if you're seeing spirits, I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think that the good spirits and the good angels come to us and try to talk to us and try to get our attention or haunt us in our house or anything like that. I just think that this is the fallen ones. This is just my opinion, showing up as something that looks like, oh, your grandfather, or this is ISIS, or this is whoever. I don't know. I don't trust it personally. So I don't really feel like Christians should be doing that. Trying to actively see spirits. And if they are, I would, like I said, you've probably got an open portal, or you're channeling them in, because if they're just showing up like that, I believe there has to be an access way, right? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's blurry. It's really difficult.
It's
difficult.
blurry.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, like in the conversations I have, it's just, it gets complicated, really complicated. And people walk away with scratching their head and feel like, well, I mean, how do I know?
We don't know. That's the thing. And you don't know what it is. And I would see Buddha all the time. He would come to me. I would literally see him just like come in front, like I just show up in front of me, like my eyes open, looking in this like a room, and there's Buddha, and I thought he was my buddy, and he would tell me all sorts of things. And I saw him for like a decade when I would do psychedelics here and there. And one thing he never told me was about Jesus Christ. And I was a non-believer of Jesus. This is hard for me to say, but I didn't believe he was real. I thought I would call the Bible tall tales. Jesus is a fictitious character. And the one thing that those spirits should have told me was about Jesus, because that's the one thing we need to know, because Jesus is the door. Jesus is the only way. That's the truth. I thank God I've come to discover that in my life. But so I don't trust these beings at all. That's just my, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, so they're going to disguise. When I learned Lucifer disguises himself as an angel of light. And it's just like, if you don't have, how can you have the discernment? Like, we aren't God, we don't know. And these fallen ones are ancient. They're thousands of years old, and they got kicked out for a reason, right? And they're trying to infiltrate our world, and they're not allowed. And they're tricksters, and they're gonna trick us. So if we're, Amy always says in our Bible study, like, God is the spirit of clarity. Lucifer and the devil is the spirit of confusion. So if it's blurry, these like beings that we're seeing, then maybe it's not of God.
That's great thoughts. Because a lot of people have, when they see a cryptid creature, or they see a creature like Luke was talking about a little bit earlier, we interviewed guys, then all of a sudden they have paranormal stuff happening in their house. They see Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden there's this weird paranormal stuff happening around their house. So it isn't good to interact with this stuff, for sure. Even just like seeing a creature out in the woods that you shouldn't. And there's a lot of weird lights and other, mind speak.
Yeah, I was seeing lots of ships in the sky and stuff too when I used to do that, like, and orbs and stuff in my house. I don't see that stuff now. Like, so, and I do, like you just said, activity will come when you open yourself up to the spirit world and you're doing occult stuff. You're calling in that energy, and I think it's kind of a little bit like, be careful. It's warning signs. I don't know.
I love it. Well, thanks, ladies. It's. I'm sure we could keep going forever on the occult stuff and all the dark ties. I mean, obviously, we could probably keep going, and maybe we can do another episode about CERN, and maybe we can continue the conversation, do like a two-parter, because it seems like this baton has been passed on, and there's still people doing it now. And I'm sure you guys get into a lot of that stuff, and the elite's getting into it. And we try to stay in the creatures realm, but
you got to cross over sometimes, Nate.
Well, it's a why.
Our YouTube will just be deleted.
It's a 4-lane highway.
Yeah, just come on over for a little bit. You can go back.
Right, we'll go back. But yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you like the conspiracy stuff, plug your show. Tell them where they can find you guys.
We Amy and I host Not So Secret Societies podcast. We drop episodes weekly. You can find us on Instagram, Not So Secret Societies. We'll have a website soon enough, I'm sure. I also host the Let's Be Friends podcast, and I can't believe that's news. So there's three ways to find me.
Yeah, we love it. We'll send our listeners there and tell them, Blurry Creatures sent you, and we'll have to do a two-parter. We'll have to do another one, right, Luke? Yep, get into
Luke.
it.
Have to get into it.
Luke's like,
What?
Dude, I'm just ready. You probably had a long day.
I know. I'm just like, am I weirded everybody out way too much sharing my stories? Like, I'd love to come back anytime. I love talking about these things, and if it,
No, it's Friday, and my brain is going to be on the veil.
I'm at the beach right now, so
Yeah,
So
I hear you. I hear you. It's all good. This is fun.
I know. I have to just make sure my kids haven't run away. I'm like, I kept going like this in the middle of the interview. Like, I don't hear them. Where are they? So they get mischievous. So we appreciate it.
This is fun.
And Kara, your story is awesome. Really, it is, and it's really encouraging to hear it.
Okay.
Most of us grow up in the church, and then we have to sort of understand this later on in life. And it takes something like seeing a Bigfoot or whatever it is to wake you up to things aren't the way I think they are. And it's a great thing to just be able to dive in your Bible and go, no, this stuff is this is like food for my soul, because I understand how dark the darkness is. And I think that's something I've learned this year. So the dark is dark, and it's getting darker every day, and it's getting more in the mainstream. It's coming right at us. So what you guys do is great, and it's really helpful. And I'm sure sometimes it's hard for me. I'm a very sensitive person. It's like, man, I can only handle so much of that. Probably just have to listen to like a Bigfoot story or something just to like get my head back.
Open your Bible up.
I know. I know, exactly. Put on some good music and pray, and then get back and center myself in God. And so, but yeah, we appreciate you guys coming on our show.
Plus, this is the first Bigfoot love story that I think we've heard. So, Amy, well done.
Thanks. I know.
The big guy.
Yeah.
The big guy he's not all bad.
He was so stoked that I was into it too. I do have to tell you guys though, and Kara and I talk about this all the time, but like, I love what you guys do too, because, you're meeting people, like Paul said, you become like them to win them, right? Not that we become, we go to a bar and become a drunk to win the drunks, not like that, but like you guys are meeting this need where people are interested, and you can interject the Bible and the word into it to win people for him.
In the world, not of the world.
Yes. Right? And that's the beauty of like your podcast and like our podcast.
Thank you.
It's so cool because you are working for the Lord,
Right.
So good job, guys.
Just telling everybody to take that exit. Take that Jesus exit.
Right.
Get on this road, but just take that Jesus exit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Narrow for a reason.
It's
the broad path is full of traps.
It's gotta be able to make sense inside the Bible if the Bible is true.
Exactly.
And I believe it is true. It's got these creatures, and people like we said on one episode, our episode 100. Like, there's a lot of Christian podcasts and there's a lot of paranormal podcasts, but there's not a lot of podcasts that put those two things together. And that's what we try to do.
Yeah, it's working. It's totally working.
Thanks.
You guys just keep it up.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that listen to our podcast say, I see in comments like, I would never be able to talk about this conspiracy, this dark stuff without the foundation of the Bible and the foundation of God or us. We always try to take it back to the Bible to like explain things. And I think like, and I know just from waking up, I woke up in like 2020, right, to all this stuff. And for a couple of years learning, oh my gosh, everybody's a Satanist. There's pedophiles everywhere. Everything's a rabbit hole. We're being poisoned. And then I didn't have God then. But once then I was saved literally by like coming to God, coming to the Bible, being saved by Jesus. Like you need that grounding foundation to go into these dark territories. You can't, you have to, God's going to lift you up, right? He's going to protect you and keep you under his wing as you learn the dark stuff.
That's cool. And
I would say if either of you would ever want to be guests on Let's Be Friends, I'd love to have you come on and talk about blurry creatures.
Let's do it. We love it. Yeah, we want to. And that's what we know a lot about is the blurry creatures, the weird stuff.
A tag team, Nate. Just be like we're an 80s show too, so one of them 80s wrestling tag teams.
We try to have some fun. That's what we do try to do.
Yeah, you got it.
We try to have fun.
I love your 80s art. I love all your Back to the Future stuff and the stuff you post on your page. I'm 80. I was born in 82.
Nate, are you 80, Nate? 81?
Yeah, I'm 80.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so young.
I'm 82.
We're all the same age.
I'm the old one in the bunch.
Amy, you're a 90s baby?
No. Oh, no.
Look at you.
76, you guys.
You look like a 90s baby, Amy.
Oh,
you're like the same. We're all the same. Oh, come on.
Right.
We're like all
not
the
really
same.
millennials.
Yeah.
We're in that same little.
The same.
Yeah,
we're that gap. We know what it was like
before
the
It
internet.
doesn't matter now.
The answer machines. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
We appreciate it, Amy. You pump our show a lot, and you've really helped our show grow. And thank you so much for tossing the blurry creatures out.
That's what it's all about, right?
It's
all about. You're very welcome, and I'm happy to do it. So
awesome.
I love you guys.
We didn't know what we were jumping You guys knew exactly what you guys were getting yourselves into. You knew exactly. Luke and I had no idea. We didn't realize, like, oh wow,
we're just a couple dummies. Like, let's have a Bigfoot podcast. It'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It works. It works.
Yeah. It's just crazy. It just gets crazy.
It's cool, and you guys have merch and stuff. I love it.
No, we're just
getting.
Yeah. You guys have a great platform.
Why not?
Your site
Why
too,
not?
Right? People stop listening. Nate and I still going to do it. We're still going to be here talking about weird stuff. Maybe just on the phone.
That's how Kara and I are.
Yeah,
We
I don't
just
even
like-
care who listens to it. I just love to hang out with Amy because, like, I needed
Right.
someone to be able to talk about this. We love talking about the same things, and my boyfriend gets so sick of hearing me talk about this stuff. And I needed, not a lot of people want to talk about the stuff that Amy and I talk about, but I feel so grateful that God's brought us together because I could just,
No, it's great.
Amy, I love
That's
you.
awesome.
I know.
And it's mostly like we just get dudes on the show who talk about this stuff, so it's great to bring some female power on because the female guests that we have brought on the show are like blow it out of the water. We brought on Dr. Laura Sanger on, and people just love her. And so Luke and I we're always out eager to learn and figure out more of the blurry world, and it's cool. Thanks for coming on, Blurry Creatures, and we'll do it again because I feel like there's a lot more here.
Okay, you guys have a good weekend.
Friday at 6, our brains are over. They're done.
I know. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
y'all.
having us
Yeah,
on.
appreciate
It's an
y'all.
honor.
Thank you.
We'll do it
Okay,
again.
Thank you.
bye.
See y'all.
All right, guys. Have fun.
Thanks.
Bye.